But Chair, just to say that part of what as well this journey will allow us to do is to start to digitalize a number of city functions. The old SAP system, as I said, that even though we had used it from 2003, we had used only about 15% of that system. It was mainly for the core finance and a little bit of asset. So we had not explored areas, for example, like your planning, your budget was always not fully digitalized. The areas of program management was running on disparate system, which made it very difficult to have a single source of truth of expenditure and things like that. So this allows us to move to that direction. And this is the summary of how we're approaching this. So obviously, Chair, there were many options that were available to the city after we had failed to go live in 2017. One was to put in full investment in bringing up an ERP at one go, a big bang approach. However, ERP implementations are expensive. And initially, the city had planned that we will go live in 3 phases. However, when 2020 hit and there were issues of finances, furthermore, the project had to be broken down to what the city can afford. If you see the outer line here is basically what we then started with in the first phase, which is what we have go live with, which is basically the core of finance. Mainly it is around the issues of accounting, of payment, a bit of asset, as well as some of the supply chain and procurement. And Chair, that was mainly we had done a full project in terms of what is, as I said, was the best way to approach this project, considering the financial limitations that were there. And then the other phases will have followed later, and are following later. The next of what we're going to focus on is your revenue. So everything that has to do with billing, meter management, and the rest of supply chain is taking place in phase 2. And then phase 3 is going to deal more with your analytics and your enhanced reporting. And then your phase, the outer phases, they are dealing with the customer relation issues and so on. So all in all, as per the Treasury regulations, and I'll make this point later, is that we're dealing with in excess of 15 core business processes of the city. So financial management, asset management, grants management, and so on. And in excess of 450 business processes that must enter into a system. And this is an approach that we had to go with, and because at that particular time, as I said, it optimized the amount of budget that we had, but it also allow us to have a much more, I think, way that we can be able to employ a system, keeping the current system in place. Obviously, that has created further and further complications, which we are currently then dealing with, and is the core of what this presentation has been requested. Just to say, as I said, Chairperson, that what is currently happening is that we're implementing a new system, but also we are dealing with the changes in the legislation in the form of M-Score. So as much as we're then implementing the new core of finance on the new S/4HANA system, revenue and payroll remains on the old legacy system. So obviously, over a period of time, as we've taken the core finance, we're going to follow with revenue, and we'll follow with payroll until we have everything on S4. But as I said, if you keep the thinking with me, is that the new system is on a 7-segment of account, where else your payroll and as well as your revenue is on the old 2-segment of account. So you're basically running 2 regimes, which obviously then creates a lot of issues when it comes to reporting, because you have your expenditure running on 7-segment, and you have your revenue and payroll on the old system running on 2-segment, and you must match this when it comes to reporting to have one singular reporting, and that is what you'll have seen finance referring to on a quarterly basis that we are in a process of continuing to refine that the systems speak together so that we have a proper singular reporting that is correct. And as I said, Chair, so we've had to take what we're doing mainly in green. You'll see this is what we have started with. The next phase is everything that is in the different colors. I don't know if it's showing the same there. And then your future phases is what is in blue. That is what we're currently implementing. So what we had to start with, this is the core of what we had to start with, as I said, is the core finance. And we went live with these particular modules in August last year, and created a whole lot of challenges that we had, as it is the case with a lot of IT system, which I'll touch on later. The core thing that I also have to keep on making the point on is around the issues of aligning the system to the new chart of account. Because naturally what will have happened if there was no changes in the legislation, we were just going to have a new system and migrate over the two charts into the new system, and everything will have been aligned. But because there were complications of the new MSCOA regulations, is the issues of the different charts that you have to deal with. But also what it means is that from a business process point of view, finance had to make sure that their data becomes MSCOA compliant. So naturally, when you had the transaction split into two, because it was a two-segment, you now have to split that transaction into 7 and make sure that all your data of the last 20 years is split into that, which obviously then creates as well an added layer of complication. So this is just basically talking to the 15 business processes that must be covered in terms of MSCOA, and how the new system is going to cover them. Just to say that these then are the core implementation challenges that have been faced and we're currently dealing with. As I said, you're dealing with two systems that are running on two different charts. You have accounts that had to be unbundled and unbundled correctly. So the city has thousands of transactions. If you just take revenue, has thousands of transactions on property, on electricity, on waste, and so on. And you have to unbundle them properly so that the data is channeled into the right new GLs as per MSCOA. So that created a lot of challenges in terms of where you had still some of the accounts on the old ECC that were not unbundled to meet the right chart on the new system, and that is part of what were challenges. A poor and undocumented business processes is that the city largely does not have documented business processes. Business processes are largely dependent on what people do and so on. And if you're going to build a system, you must have proper processes. You must know that the document starts from Stella, it moves to that person and is approved. But depending on who you deal with in the city, processes changes. So you had a situation where the system had been built, and as you implement, people start to say, no, but maybe we must not have any expenditure without an SLA. And that is just a process that changes, and then you now have to deal with the issues of all those particular things. The entities were not fully included on S4, so the way that the MSCOA wants is that all the city as a parent as well as its entities must run on a singular ERP. So your TIDA had its own payroll systems and finance systems and so on, and they were not at the same pace. I mean, even now, as much as we're able to go live with TIDA, HCT remained behind, which means that whatever that HCT is doing, it's doing on two segments, but it's also doing on separate, disparate systems that are not on. So you have your architecture at the moment that is a bit all over the place, but the end goal of what we're doing is that we'll get everyone to work on a singular ERP. Out of scope requirements, and this is part of what is caused by the lack of business processes, is that when you develop a system, a business will tell you this is how we do assets. And as you implement, and then there will be things that will come after to say, by the way, we send assets to an auction. By the way, we retire assets. So some of the things that initially would not have been in the scope came as an afterthought, and which meant that we had to, throughout the previous financial year, build the system as we go. And governance over M-Score is that as much as you have the system, as I said, M-Score is a completely different thing, and it's not an IT thing. And if you look at municipalities like Ekurhuleni, for example, they have a full unit, M-Score unit, which their task was to take the legislation, interpret it, so that by the time you do your systems, it is backed by proper governance of M-Score. And in the city, we still don't have that. It's in between us and finance, and we try to patch that as we go over. And obviously, finance as well had a lot of transition problems. In the previous year, we know that in the middle of everything, the previous CFO had to leave. There were issues around divisional heads, changes, and so on, which obviously, when you implement a bigger project, you require a person that is able to drive. And I think as we received the new CFO, I must say that things really did turn for the better, and we're able to have sort of that particular control of finance, and having people to know that this is what we're doing, and so on. But obviously, as I said, in the previous year, at finance level, there were quite a lot of changes at executive level and at departmental level, which obviously set us back. But as I said, that continued to improve as we had new appointments and so on. This is just, as I said, the current architecture that is a bit of a complication. So you have the S4HANA system, which will in the future have all these particular functions in them. But at the moment, all these particular systems, they run on its own. So you have ISU, which is a revenue. You have payroll, which is your HR. You have CAPS, which is your expenditure on project management and CAPEX. You had your asset, being what Akile had done, and all of that, as well as all the other third parties that are there, your revenue and so on. And obviously, data comes from all this particular repository, and at the end of the day, you must try to put everything together on S4, and that is the current architecture that is complications, and it has its own problems, but this is the to-be, which basically is for us to have an end-to-end ERP that has all your finance, planning, performance, CRM, service delivery, and your entity into one, which will then allow for all transactions to be in one. You have singular data and transaction, and that obviously then improves your integrity of reports and so on. These are just some of the things that we had to do to deal with those particular challenges. So the way that the system in the city works is that you have SAP as a system of record and transaction. You have Caseware, which is where finance does its financial statements. And then you have your ECC, which is your old legacy system. So you will recall, Chair, that in the previous year, the city submitted the financials very late, and what it meant is that even though you had migrated into the new system in June or July, you did not have the final closing figures of the previous year because the financials were only done later on. So you had to go into the new system with figures basically that were changing. So obviously that affects reporting, because your closing balance in your old system, when you switch it off, must correspond with your opening balances. So as I said, that the city had about 4 or 5 months after the financial year where the financials were not there, which means some of your key closing figures of the previous system that were supposed to inform your new system were not there. So obviously that creates a whole lot of complication in the integrity of the report and so on. We then also had the release of the reports very late. You will know that you started receiving your Section 71 reports very late because the configuration of that started into the financial year. But these are all the issues that we had to do. So as I said, that when CFO came through, there was a release of the financial statements. There was also then a project to start fixing the old closing balances and making sure that they are corresponding journals that are done in what the system had closed as at the end of June, and all the transactions that had happened at the end of the financial year were properly accounted into the opening figures of the new financial year. So all of those things had to be done on an ongoing basis as part of refining and correcting the data. And you'll have seen as you were reaching July and so on, there was more and more improvement in the integrity of the data. But obviously, as I said, with the architecture that you have, that is still ongoing. The issues of assets were done much later in the year, so my assets were only migrated around, I think it was around August, no, not August, around September, thereabout, because it was a big area that had not been unbundled at that particular time into the new GLs, which meant that your issues like your depreciation and so on could not be done earlier on. So if you look at the Section 71 reports that you received from November thereabout, it did not have depreciation numbers. Only that came around January when we had properly migrated. So all of that are the improvements that had to be done as we went along. As I said, entities, TIDA came on board very, very late, but luckily as well that was, they catch on very quick, and they were able to go live before the end of the financial year. And actually, as it is with the city, their financial statements that they submitted on the 31st last week were based on the trial balance from the S4. So I think that at the end of the day was improved. And HCT, as I said, that is still halfway. We had issues of participation from HCT, which have been escalated to MACO, and there is action around getting HCT on board, because as I said, until we have everyone running on a singular system, data integrity is always an issue, because you're patching things with journals, you receive information here, and so on, and you can't then avoid the issue. You can't avoid the issues of inconsistencies in the data. And as I said, that there were also systems issues. So as we used the system, some of the things wouldn't work and so on. And we had to have a daily meeting with finance wherein we were able to have the issues as they were raised. And that daily meeting helped chair as part of the improvement plan to make sure that there is not talking past each other with finance. We all know what the priority calls are. We assign the champions so that there's accountability. And if you can see the list here, more and more championing became of business use. Leading the project, which as well as I said, is part of the improvement that we've seen. And that is the intervention that came from the top, and is that. These are the incomplete issues that we are still dealing with, which you'll see that they currently remain. As I said, HCT is still out of the system. There is yet to automate the data string submission, so the raw transactions. What we want, Chairperson, is that at the moment is once we have transactions, there is still a human intervention for data strings to be in the form of your C schedules and your submission to finance, which obviously that's an issue, because you have transactions, they must be manipulated, not in a wrong sense, but they must be manipulated for them to be in a form that they are submitted to Treasury. So part of what we want to do is to automate that so that there is no manual intervention with the numbers. In its raw sense, when a transaction has taken place into the system, it must go straight into the right journals for you to produce an income statement or a balance sheet without people having to manipulate and do all of that. And then the reconciliation of the different tables that are there. So as I said, that we're currently running the two tables, the two systems, the old revenue and payroll in one, and the expenditure in another. So what currently happens is that we take all the revenue and payroll transactions, we transform them into 7 segments in a certain table. And expenditure is running on 7 segments, and then we produce a singular report. So because of the integration and interface issues, some of the transactions, if they don't meet the master, they then form out and they are not part of the reporting. So there are interface issues as well as the rules issues that we're currently working with to ensure that the transactions always reconcile. You're able to pick up any transaction that has been done on ECC and has not been transferred over, as well as if it has not, what is the reason, Chair. So that is the first issue. So these are the key issues that are improvement, issues that must take place. And once these are completed, we'll then be able to have a full integrity of reporting. But obviously, the long-term plan is to get the whole of revenue and payroll as well on one system. But in the interim, while we implement the project, this is the fix that we're currently busy with. So I'm providing progress in terms of where we are with that particular action. With the first one, there is testing that is led by the DH for budget. And we hope that at the end of this particular quarter, we will then have the interface issues sorted. We hope and have currently a plan for HCT, which goes up until 18 November. That is their plan go live. And then the plan go live for the automation of the data streams is in October. Chair, this is, as I said, this is the improvement, further improvement that is taking place in addition to the one before, is to continue to assess the code as it is with M-Score, is that there are changes every year. There are new releases by Treasury. So currently we are busy with looking at what the new M-Score release is looking like and what is impacting, so that we can be able to change the code and accommodate the changes from Treasury. But the engagement here, Chair, I must say that we want to have with Treasury is around having integrity of the chart, because we can't have a chart that changes every year. It compounds problems for municipality. Already M-Score as it is as a legislation is a problem for municipalities, and the fact that Treasury continues to change the chart just continues to compound the problems at municipal level. The issues of the performance metrics is around, as I said, the interface issues, ensuring that the transactions are not failing, is minimum downtime in the environment. The automation, we're looking at the issues of the reporting, as I said, automating the data stream so that there is less and less human intervention, and improving the user experience. So if you look at what we currently are doing, is how we can make then the work of finance better, so that all the things that have had to be done manually, the creation of journals and so on, is improved. And lastly is the implementation of phase 2, because while we run the two systems, it will take long for us to be able to improve. So we need to be able to improve. And if you look at your cities like Joburg, City of Cape Town has committed proper resources to make sure that they achieve the implementation of S4HANA. And the city, I know that we are constrained, but there really needs to be a need to ensure that we do that. As I said, the old system is going out of commission in 2026, and to support it will be very expensive. And so by the time we reach 2026, we must have migrated payroll and revenue. So as I said, what we had at least as wins was the stabilization. So all the transactions eventually of 2023-2024 were done on the new system. I know that the first 4 months, 5 months were paying for the city. We only started transacting, for example, on CAPEX from September. But if you look at the end, there was good recovery in terms of that. So from an impact and transaction point of view, that was managed at the end. The alignment of the closing balances, as I said, was key for finance to be able to produce a credible set of financial statements. And I must say our appreciation for the shift that finance put here to be able to produce those financial statements on time with all the complications that we had. The core reports, we've gone some way to develop them, but as I said, there is continuous improvement to make sure that all transactions are accounted for in time. There's integrity in the monthly reports, and all the issues that we still have of interface, of data streams are sorted. The refining of data has improved, and this is also going to be key for revenue, because if we repeat what we did now with revenue, the city will be in a complete state of chaos. People will have wrong bills, they will have all kinds of things. So there needs to be learning as much as we're refining data. By the time we get to those critical phases, we would have needed to have proper data management in the city on an ongoing basis. As I said, that the drawing of the TP and submission of the financials, even though with revenue we still had to rely on ECC, but there was some way of improvement. These are some of the risks that still remain, Chair. Is that the S4HANA implementation is not about upgrading from the old system. And I think the approach of the city was as if you're upgrading, which is not. It's a whole new greenfield implementation. So there was a lot of, but we thought ICT, you know what we had. And you can't work like that. Every system must be based on the business processes, and so on. You can't just copy the code from the old system into the new system. It must be informed by proper requirements, change management, and so on. So those risks still remain, even though to a certain extent have improved in the city. There's better change. I think there's better acceptance that we're changing the system, and so some of the challenges that you had initially of adoption are dissipating. The funding remains a risk, as I said, that if you look at the city of Cape Town is putting about R1 billion for 10 years for their implementation of S4, the same as the city of Joburg and the city. We're still funding about 70 million a year, so which really is a challenge. But we're looking at the different means to be able to accelerate our project because the funding issue is going to be with us for some time. The data quality is poor in the city. I think the AG and everyone who comes and look at what we do can attest to that. And obviously then it creates a lot of complication when you migrate junk into a new system. Junk you migrate, junk you get on the other side. And whereas when you are doing a transformational reform like M-score and so on, it exposes a lot in your data and so on. So we need to invest in cleansing of the data and so on. And the issue of not having the right people or even inadequate is an issue. The way that the city works, at least the way that the IT department was configured, was that the SAP support is wholly outsourced. You only have the director and a deputy director and one specialist. So obviously you can't take on projects of this magnitude if you don't have people. Because the same person that manages S4HANA manages Ariba and manages all the other, and must still keep the current ECC environment working. So we are doing something about this. We're changing our microstructure to have a bit of internal capacity, and we're also investing in a center of excellence, which we hope that at least per year we'll start getting 15 to 20 trainees that we can start train, and they can be able to troubleshoot and manage the project and the system and provide support on a day-to-day basis. But the risks in terms of using consultants is a key. I mean, there were issues last year where while we are in the middle of the implementation, someone resigned on the side as a consultant, and you can't tell the service provider not keep that person because you contracted the service provider, not a person. So it created a bit of challenges. And also that it is expensive, a form of providing your small support. You don't want to use a consultant to deal with certain smaller troubleshooting issues. So that is it, but we have a proper risk register that we follow as a project, that we manage on a day-to-day basis. So just giving the information, but these are some of the risks that remain, and we used to have daily meetings, as I said, with finance, but as the system became more stable, we now have bi-weekly stand-up meetings with finance, which oversee as to what is it that is a problem, how are we resolving it, and so on. I think I've touched on this to say that we're building the internal capacity, or we are at least making plans to build that, and we hope it will be supported from a structure change point of view. But also, as I said, that beyond IT, the city needs to build capacity to do SOPs, to do the rest of the M-Square business processes, because finance was just the beginning, but you have HR, you have everyone else that must still be automated, and there needs to be a process to do that. So, Chair, in summary, we didn't focus only on the improvement, but we thought it was important to give a background of how we ended where we were with the reporting challenges, the challenges that still remain, and where the project needs to go for us to continuously improve the integrity of the data, but also towards the completion of the full move to the new system. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that presentation. I think it does give us some light. We had a lot of challenges. I think councillors just saw this step for HANA's, this boogeyman that is really impeding our progress. So I think when we get more detail, it does start to make sense what the city's up against. But I will take hands for clarity. And yeah, if there are any questions, I'll start with Councillor Farquharson, followed by Councillor Randall, and Councillor Maluleke, in that order.
Thanks very much, Chair. Interesting process, wonderful to look at. Can you confirm which date we will be only doing financials on SAP for HANA and get rid of the other financial system? Thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to alert the presenter. I'm not aware of OFA with your abbreviations. So on slide 11, you're using two abbreviations. I don't have a clue what it means. At something and BH. There's an ACDOCIA and BSEG, if you can maybe just explain. Secondly, Chair, non-compliance at this stage, I've just touched base with the former MMC for finance here. Will this potentially lead to audit finding if the city is not compliant by a certain date? Or has it led to any findings? And lastly, what support are we getting from Provincial Treasury, from Gauteng Provincial Treasury? Remember when EMSCO was started, I think in 2009, there were a lot of piloting done, a lot of initial processes where they had technical advisors, and I can see that you say it's a scarce skill. And how have we been leveraging the intergovernmental relations to assist us in rolling out this? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. Councillor Maluleke.
No, thanks, Chair. I've been a critic of migration also. You know my sentiments. And they were coming from a good place that we might have hurried to move. And I think you are mentioning today that there are two processes to try and catch up. We are still having SEP and we're moving with S4HANA. Therefore, that's why I was saying when I raised this last year that phasing it in was a better option, especially to catch up with spending and other things, because if you look at the intention of M-Score, like what Councillor Randall says, the intention was to bring efficiency on service delivery and accounting purposes. And if you are having a tool that is not going to assist you in bringing efficiency and making sure that we are accurate in our reporting, therefore, you are just missing the objective. But the point that I want to raise now is that when you then deal with reporting, and for two tools that you are using, then when we read reports of finance, you must also juxtapose them against performance. Because we can be told something, and later when you look at performance, because these are not the same people that are dealing with that. Organizational performance is somebody else who sits there. The other day, MMC was telling us that we are at 96% of spending, I think. And I said, I doubt that. Because my worry is, I look at performance against what you're telling us. And on these two tools, how efficient are we in terms of timelines of reporting? Because if we are then missing deadlines, we might have a problem, because on performance, many of the things that we read there are assumptions. The correct reporting that we must rely on is these tools that we're using. And we just want to understand the accuracy and the timelines of meeting deadlines, because of that it's our concern. And many other things can be work in progress. You can work on making sure that you then integrate systems to get better people. But reporting is a big ticket for us, that when AG comes here and we need to report, we just want to make sure that we're meeting deadlines, and we don't want to stipulate what are the reasons why we're not meeting deadlines. Then let's then have that response on that, so that we can be in a comfortable situation to say, we're moving this way, we're going to be fully migrated at this date, that you would then communicate to us. Thank you.
Councillor Saxon?
Thank you. You see, this is a classic example. We don't have to waste money on consultants. We can use our Maleka councillor. He's in the city and he knows what's going on. Just pull in your leg, councillor. Chair, just a question to Musa. As with any system, it depends on the people operating the system. Okay, you can have the best system if the people who operate the system are not doing what they're supposed to do. And I know there has been problems where SLAs has not been put in place and people didn't come forward and they didn't do what they needed to do. They didn't assign people to specific functions and there's been delays. If you can maybe just give an indication on how they're dealing with that now, what processes are in place to actually make sure that the operators of the system do what they need to do, because this always comes back to Musa and his department there. People blame SAP for HANA, people blame the implementation, where actually it's a specific department who didn't upload an SLA or do something, some administrative process that they were supposed to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those were the 4 questions. Over to you, Group.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so as I said earlier, so the movement, Councillor David, to move payroll, that's a 12 months project. So we currently are busy with a payroll on S4. It's called Success Factors, and that is a 12 months project. For revenue, it's an 18 months project. So we're looking at 2026 as the full migration over. As I said, the system, anyway, the old system is going out of support in 2026. So that is a hard deadline that we have. In the interim, we will continue to run the 2 systems with the refinements that I'm speaking to here, which later fixes the issues that Councillor Maluleke is talking about. The city has not been compliant, Councillor Randall, on M-Score since it was promulgated in 2013. So the M-Score wants all cities to run all transactions on 7 segments without manual intervention. It wants everyone to run on a singular database to avoid what Councillor Maluleke says, that you have one figure of CAPEX here, another one is telling you this one. There must be one system that tells you what is a. So that remains. Obviously, the move and it will have destabilized finance. But as I said, I think there was a good shift that was put to produce the financial statement. So obviously, the AG is going to be the judge of that. We are moving from a lower base of a disclaimer. And obviously, there were these complications we had. But I think that there were quite a lot of improvements at the end that finance did. So the proof is going to be now if there are any things that the AG is going to say about the trial balance and our source data and so on. The provincial treasury, I must say that there was a whole lot of things that were done in 2009. And as it is with government, when there are new reforms, there are a whole lot of consultants that are sent. But at the end of the day, the proof is in the cost that the regulations have. These regulations are very costly for municipalities. Yes, the city of Cape Town can have R1 billion. Maybe the city of Tshwane will have 500 million to do what we can do. Joburg has already used 800 million with no results. So, but you can think of a smaller municipality in the middle of nowhere. They are not going to be able to implement. So it's very good legislation, There is costly to implement, and there are no resources. So you do have platforms where people are calling conference, but at the end of the day, that's not support. Even the pilots that were there were not pilots to demonstrate the new chart. For example, City of Tshwane was one of the pilots in 2013, but it was just a whole lot of document, ICT steering committee you must have, an M-squad champion you must not. So it's that level of support which you can't touch and feel. So there is intergov, but it's just a whole lot of talk shops. Councillor Malilega, I agree that the implementation approach, look, it depends on a school of thought. In hindsight, you might say it was easy to wait until you build a full system and migrate, but you had Treasury from 2018 that was withholding the equitable share of the city, and the city in 2018 January couldn't pay for supplies because Treasury withheld the equitable share and said, you must do something about M-score or you're not going to get the equitable share. So there had to be something. And at that particular time when we started this project, the project had in the M-Tribe, so if you go to the budget of 2018, there was 150 million for each year to do this project. 2020 came and all the challenges of COVID and finances. So what was initially 150 budget has become a 70 million. But what do? Because you can't wait for 10 years building a system and come back after 10 years with a complete system. You have to start somewhere. And unfortunately, this is what you have to do. The issue is how to accept the risk and manage them. And understand that you are in a transition period where there's going to be these things, but as we continue to refine, the system will be better. But as I said, I mean, in hindsight, we are correct and everyone else can be correct, but we had to make decisions, and those decisions we made and had to face now the consequences of those. So part then of what you're saying correct is that the end point must be this. You must have finance, you must have planning and performance in one area. So if you look now, we've done quite a lot of finance. Planning, we have the PPP module, it will be done by November, so you'll also have PPM in one pot. So if the transactions, they happen on S4, they will report on project planning. So you'll then have now one number. You'll not have strategy and caps giving you CAPEX and finance giving you numbers of a separate term. Performance then gradually then it will all come into one as you put in revenue, as you put in everything. So the issue is that while you have this architecture of the S4, the other things and so on, and I'll come to the question that Councillor Randall said, is around then fixing the integrity of the data so that all your revenue transactions that are happening on ECC, they then go into a table where they are converted into the 7. All right, and these don't worry about the abbreviation. It's basically then the tables, the names of the tables on SEP. So it's the table that is hosting all the transactions, and that is the reconciliation, Councillor Malilega, that we're trying to strengthen. That if you've bought prepaid on billing, all the prepaid transactions can be accounted for in this table, because from this table is where you're going to draw your reporting. At the moment, as I said, the integrity of this table is what we had to work on, because not all the transactions were coming through out of interface, out of a splitting of those transactions, because you had to split them into 7 and all of that. But finance is assisting now, ensuring that that reconciliation takes place, and subsequently the information that comes to you is accurate. So by 30 September that should be done. So the numbers of quarter 1 and going into quarter 2 should take us to a much more improved integrity. And as I said, is that now all the transactions that come from HCT, they are bundled into some journal, and there's a bit of trying to make that into 7 segments and implement. So we need HCT to run on S4, because of all those transactions from human settlements, they go out of the system in one form, they are transacted at HCT in another form, they come back to the city in reporting in another form, and you try to manipulate these journals. And as I said, that we need to have them transacting on the system, just like we've had TIDA on. And the last key issue is of automating the data string. Data string is basically all the transactions data that happen in the city must end up in a C schedule, either an income statement or a balance sheet, without any human intervention, so that you have it directly as a transaction into a report that subsequently you have. So the aim is that we want to automate that, so that there are no journals, there is nothing, there is no interference. And this, Councillor Maluleke, in summary, is the key things that needs to happen and the timelines for us to improve the accuracy. Currently, it is some form of accuracy, but it takes a whole lot of journals and changes, which is what you don't want. You want pure transactions as they happen, to know them as MPEG and everyone who consume our data.
Thank you very much for the responses. I'm sure the colleagues are a bit clearer on what is happening with this gift. I think we've come to the end of this particular presentation. We will now move on to the next presentation. There was one from finance about the credit age analysis. So we will allow the colleagues from finance to present this for us, and then I'm sure we will be done by 12:30. Thank you for bearing with us, colleagues. I know we've been going for 4 hours straight, but it demonstrates our commitment. Thank you. Colleagues, let's go into our presentation. Yeah, you may proceed.
Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity. Indeed, I think the purpose of this report was to give accountability to the MPLAC committee on our plans and dealing with the city's increasing creditors' age analysis. I think on the backdrop of that, the biggest concerns were raised in light of various unpaid invoices. In some instances, we exceeded 120 days. But I think from a discussion perspective, it's always wise for us to give a picture of what the current situation is. We also, in short, show impact of the improvement that is currently taking place in line with the initiatives and the activities that we've already put on board. Yes, as at the 27th of August, upon writing up this report, we're seeing at a debtors book of 7.3 billion rand. If you look at the makeup of the 7.3 billion rand, they'll be broken down into 5.5 billion coming up from the power utility. You'll take note that the previous 2 months from 60, 90, 31, 60, as well as current, were paid in full. Outstanding amounts from previous months wherein the city has already entered into a debt repayment plan with the power utility. You'll take note, Chairperson, that from Rand Water account, it is zero right throughout for the previous 9 months consecutive. There's only a current account which was also paid on time at an amount of 376 million rand. And I think one of the biggest improvements that are visible for us all to see is the reduction of that debt, which was 4.5 billion rand, currently sitting at 703 as of this reporting date. Now I can assure you it's below 690 million rand. So I think this is the status quo of our debtors, and the initiative that we put on board over and above reassignment of our revenue and rebuilding the city's tax administration was to enter into payment arrangements with various critical stakeholders. So Chair, I think we in some way or another are demonstrating that we are in control of what we owe individuals outside there. We are in control and we are in the ability to ensure that they are paid on a timely basis. In failure to do that, there are sufficient plans in place that are entered into between various stakeholders, which are honored in time and timelessly. Chair, this is evident purely by the fact of when last did anyone around this table hear dispute between Eskom and City of Tshwane in the media. These are one of the initiatives that you can see that in the past we were constantly fighting in the media and the public domain. That has subsided. We've got a good working relationship with the power utility. We are paying them on a regular basis. There's constant communication between ourselves and the services from Eskom. So the working relationship has improved. That improvement in working relationship is, of course, transmitted by the improvement in the payments that the city is making towards honoring what's due to the power utility. So over and above that and the stabilization of what we owe critical stakeholders that we do business with and that help us execute our mandate as a city, we also have a funding plan which is being implemented on a regular basis. Chair, this is results from the first month of the financial year. In terms of our projections from the funding plan, this is over and above the budget. We had planned in the funding plan to collect an amount of 3.6 billion rand for July, for argument's sake. I'm on the next page. We've collected 3.7 billion rand. Actual cash in the city's bank account, we succeeded the target by 77.2 million rand. This is not the budget, this is the funding plan. So we've exceeded it way far, almost by 100 million rand. We've just concluded the figures for August. In August, we're planning 3.4 billion. I can give you surety to share we collected 3.59 billion, just short of 3.6 billion rand. So for 2 months consecutively, our cash flows have been surpassing the funding plan over and above the budget itself, which means it puts us in a better position to reduce the obligations that the city has inherited over the period of time. It's evident by way of seeing the results. I'm just going to go back in the reduction of the VAT debt from 4.5 billion to 704 million. By ensuring a constant payment of the Rand Water account, by ensuring that the Eskom account is paid in full for 3 consecutive months, 90 days, and the payment arrangement that's in place is for all the debt, which we're all aware of in terms of our payment plan. Aside from that, Chair, I think we also have put systems in place to try and start to address the distribution losses, both on water and electricity. We have seen that there has been some improvements on electricity, where it's reduced from 25.5 to 22.4 as at June 2023. It's been a marginal increase on the water losses from 30.6 to 32.6. But I think there are systems in place that we're trying to put on board to try and reduce this even further. The rapid response that you're seeing from the electricity perspective is a result of us trying to match the turning the electricity business into a profitable business unit in nature. Hence, you'll see the robust illegal connections program that the city has undertaken. You'll see the robust reconnection of LPU metering on board. You'll see the robust reduction in terms of estimations and billing clients for what they actually consumed. Over and above this, we are confident that once the cost of study supply has been improved, we'll be in a position to implement tariffs that are more cost reflective, which will help us deal with these losses on a faster basis than we've already seen. So in short, over and above that, Chair, we know some of the root causes for our water losses. We felt it's wise for us to bring this on board, that over and above us seeing improvement in certain aspects, let's show the committee the areas where we still need to significantly focus on in order to turn around the business unit in its entirety. One thing getting money from what we serve, but we need to have value for the entire value chain of the revenue cycle, both from water and electricity. So these are some of the key root causes which we're all aware of. But aged infrastructure, sometimes our repairing is a bit slower than we anticipate. There's theft in terms of illegal connections, but at least there are systems that we put on board that we're trying to ensure that we mitigate these losses from crippling the city indefinitely. I think we've received some various comments from our stakeholders, Chair, and in conclusion, we want to give confidence to MPEC at large that the city has got full control of what it owes its service providers and all individuals who do business with us. We've got sufficient mechanisms that we put on board in order to quell any issues of non-payment, put in place payment arrangements, and to ensure that there's thorough communication with all stakeholders. Also, coupled by that, from an expenditure perspective, we've seen a significant improvement in terms of our revenue, which is then reassigned to critical stakeholders like the power utility, your water provider, etc. So in short, Chair, this is the report that we're presenting to MPEC today. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Are there any questions, colleagues? Councillor Farquharson? Councillor Rendon, Councillor Sutton, Councillor Maluleka.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say this report is very comforting. And I just want to add, we're going to have to wait for the financial recovery new plan to get a better idea of what's going to happen. But it's very nice to see the debt going down from billions to hundreds of millions. So thanks very much, Chair, and I look forward to the new financial recovery plan.
Thank you, Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me echo the remarks from my colleague to say that we indeed moving in the right direction. Chair, my question would only be in terms of your expenditure management policy that also deals with creditors and payments. If we indeed then have something like that, I'm sure we have, and it brings me to a question in terms of interest that we pay on the late payment of creditors. Can I get a ballpark figure more or less on where we stand with regards to late payments and the interest that it has accrued as a result of that? And then secondly, are we moving or are we already on an e-invoicing system? Especially my thought goes to small, medium enterprises where you've got a small company. If they don't get their payment within 30 days, that company can potentially close down because he puts in all his capital and is waiting for money beyond 30 days. I'm not saying the city is deliberately, forsaking them, but it's very critical that we look at our economic development, especially with our SMMEs, and that we focus on timeliest payment for them, because their capital is often locked up in the service that they have to render, and they have to wait for payment. And that's why training of your SMMEs in terms of the systems that we're using is critical, and that we have as an effective system where you've got e-invoicing, speaking to the purchase order, that we eliminate duplicate invoices, we eliminate corruption in terms of that, and we eliminate also interest that's accrued because of late payment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rendo. Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. And also, Chair, to the CFO, clearly the controls and the efforts that's been put in place is yielding results, and that cash collection is really very, very good, and I think we continuously beating the previous records in the city of Tshwane in terms of collection. The one thing I just want to make sure, and I'm also very encouraged with how the creditors have come down, but if we look at the assertions and when the Auditor General will come in, that's what they will want to clarify and make sure that there's reasonable assurance that we have dealt with the occurrence. So in other words, the steps that we have taken to make sure that there are no creditors that are sitting in drawers somewhere or people that haven't submitted invoices, etc., because that's always our risk, is that we think we have this, and then in the meantime, there's a lot of other creditors out there that we're not even aware of because of administrative flaws. One of those measurements, CFOs, to check open purchase orders. And to see the linking of document to open purchase orders. I would just like to get your opinion on that, or maybe there's better measurements, but just so that we don't get a nasty surprise on that. And the other measure that's always that I also just want to get your view on is if we do reconcile back to statements now, to creditor statements, because that's exceptionally, and that's been an audit finding in the past as well, where the Auditor General didn't feel sufficiently we have reconciled back to creditor statements and that there was reliance on our H analysis. And then the last one, I'm just curious, did we do any measures like a creditor circulation, for instance, or a letter to creditors where, we basically say to them that according to us, this is the balance. If they disagree, please can they let us know, etc. Just to get that understanding. Just to get your view on that, please. Thank you.
And thank you, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Maluleka.
No, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's a comprehensive report, CFO. But when one consumes this report and also look at what we adopted as our work, I think in the last council meeting in MPEC, in terms of interest that we're paying, and I think it was on ESCOM and other things. I think we received them 2-3 months ago when we engaged with AG. We remain with a concern. I think it's the ANC caucus that we don't have to present a good picture when the reality is that we are still facing our struggles. That we are collecting, it's nice, but the fact is that we are still borrowing from Paul to pay Peter, not Satan. But our struggle still continues of trying to manage our finances. And the evidence is when we are unable to meet our obligation of paying small or SMMEs, people that look at these small finances for their survival. And that is against the spirit of National Treasury, of making sure that we honor our invoices. But I wish how we receive this presentation and the narrative that we're giving, that we're improving, we will look at our recovery plan, which I think you stated in the report that it was adopted in 2021. It needs to be recalibrated so that we can at least be focused on post-COVID and the new challenges that are coming of expensive electricity that people can afford. Other consumables are still expensive for different households. And what would then be our response as a government? I see Kuruleni wants to write off over 70% of their debt. Is it going to be sustainable? Because one of the things that we were having a debate about was for National Parliament to look at increasing our equity share so that we can then be able to respond to some of the challenges that are that we then are able to respond or be responsive. But even if we have that,
I can't believe Councillor Masik is misbehaving next to the Chief of
Yeah, she's a BBT. She was born before technology, Councillor Masuku. Then, CFO, the other concern is also on our debtors book. As much as we want to do all these things, we just need to have a strategy on how we are going to get our 20 billion on the debtors book. Because we are trying to get to write-offs here and there, but our people, they must also pay for services that we are offering them, that we are giving them, because we've got technical losses here and there, they're still costing us. But we must also look at people having the willingness of paying us. And also a strategy of making sure that we also compensate those that are paying us religiously, on time, regularly. And what is it that we are taking? What is the message that we are taking back to them? Because all of these things are going to build on the positive energy and the outlook that we're having. Then let's work on those. Let's look at the new strategy. What is it that's going to be contained in that? Because I read a report like this with a pinch of salt. That CFO wants to give us a good impression, but if we look at the reality, we know that he's still struggling to meet some of his obligations. Then we can't receive a political message because of sometimes we are messaging for political optics, but not the reality that we are facing, because you have a struggle. When you get to the 10th, you know that you must make sure that you pay your workers. That is the first thing. You don't want that time bomb that you're sitting with. Once you're done with them, you're looking at your big creditors. What is it actually that you're going to do with them? Then all these struggles, all of us must be consumed in the same energy. That we're struggling, let's cut on this. But the backlash will be then that people will have a struggle. You're going to lose jobs. You're not going to create jobs if you're cutting on social spending. But otherwise, you still have to do right things so that the city can come back to normalcy, and so that we can then be able to have a city that attracts investors in many areas that we want to see. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Madleka. I'll now allow the CFO to respond to those 4 questions. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you so much. I think, indeed, honourable councillors are raising valid points, which we are going to incorporate upon compilation of the new financial recovery plan. Indeed, the financial recovery plan that we have has played its role in terms of institutionally stabilizing institution. We're now moving into a different phase where we need to see tactical results flowing through, so that there's an impact that can be sustainable not only for today, but for the next 5, 10, 15, 30 years. I think that's where we want to go. Hence, I think the focus will really around changes that are structural in nature to affect the entire economy of the city of Tshwane. I think the first one, in terms of the expenditure management policy, yes, we do have an expenditure management policy, which is activated upon in line with Section 65 Municipal Finance Management Act. We are paying interest, late interest on various suppliers, in fact 2, if I might say, where of late only one. It's only as compared to paying interest. Other service providers who charge us interest would have been Rand Water, would have been SARS, would have had that, and it would have been the Auditor General. Auditor General is being paid on time. Rand Water matter has been resolved in the process of ensuring it stabilizes and remains the same. Interest from the VAT debt is currently in place, but it's at a minimal perspective, taking into account we've reduced this from 4.5 billion to 703 million rand. To date, we're only paying interest on ESCOM. For argument's sake, last month on the 2.2 billion rand bill that was received as a result of this 5.5 billion that's still in arrears from the previous financial year, we had to incur 53 million rand of interest. But we are hopeful that over time, similarly to the VAT situation, once we complete the implementation of our repayment plan, that will slowly increase and subside. Hopefully then we maintain the status quo moving forward. E-invoicing system is in place. I think in most instances we try and encourage and working together with our department to ensure invoices are submitted on time. That's the biggest issue that we face in some instances, that particularly for small SMMEs, I can assure you, I've taken a no-stop approach in terms of payment of invoices of R1 million and below. It shouldn't take more than 10 days. It's a non-negotiable factor that I've communicated to my teams and all partners that we have across the city. So in some instances, we find that a service provider who is an SMME who has an invoice less than R1 million, it must be more of an administrative issue on the invoice, the purchase order, something of that nature, which I think we'll try and encourage our group heads and divisional heads to deal with accordingly. But I think that is work in progress, and these are just some of the no-nonsense approach that we've taken in terms of SMMEs. We do have some steps that we've put on board on the Councillor Sutton in terms of ensuring that the creditors book is complete. Amongst other things that we've put in place is to ensure monthly communication to all group heads and all consumers that you submit your invoice on this date, we want to complete our Section 71, we need it to be complete and an accurate picture of the city's status in terms of creditors. That's what we've done. This has helped us, in fact, in this current financial year, to have a lesser amount of accruals. In previous years, you'll find that at year-end, a massive amount of accruals is raised, in excess of billions rand in some instances. This year, we've seen a massive reduction of that as a result of the internal controls that we put on board. The open purchase orders is indeed a good mechanism of checking outstanding invoices on member. What we've done in this instance is, rather than to force individuals to submit invoices, we had to add this as part of our commitments register and say, okay, because we've put systems in place on a monthly basis to encourage people to submit invoices on time, because we've allowed an additional period as for our accruals and loading invoices for work completed after the reporting cycle, anything still outstanding, we'll record that under our commitments listing. Hopefully that will be completed within a period of time as per the contract management systems that we have with various of these clients. And I think lastly, reconciling back to statements, we've taken an approach where we're reconciling the top biggest 30 creditors now, because in most instances, those are the main ones at the end of the financial year. Other service providers, we do have a confirmation of account is due. In the event someone is unable to submit a statement, we do circulate an amount that is kept within the city, depicting the number of invoices that are there. We request service provider to confirm that. This is the POE that forms part of our municipal audit file from our creditors age analysis. I think in short, the turnaround is still in progress. We have not really turned the tide in terms of having the city fully, I think, recovered from a financial perspective. I must confirm that as much as we have stabilized and we are seen to be in control of the critical aspects that will expose the city to a complete dereliction, we're still at a very fragile stage. This fragility must still be handled with care, and we must continue the implementation of these systems in order for us to be sustainable in the near future. So fragility is still there. We still need to keep a keen eye in terms of the outstanding matters, and I think the key mechanism to measure is your payments to your power utility, your rent wards, your critical stakeholders. Our ability to deal with such major stakeholders is an indicator of the city's ability to turn around. So I'll say we're still at a very fragile stage, but I can confirm that the light is definitely there. The numbers will speak for themselves. I mean, if we are able to surpass our funding target by more than 77 million rand, it shows that we are slowly working towards turning the tide. I think the most difficult part of it all is ensuring sustainability, not only for now, but for the near future. I think the plans that we're trying to put in place, that these issues or internal controls we're putting on board needs to be institutional in nature. It need not really around me or a person or an individual somewhere. It must be institutionalized in nature, that it's automated. This is the only way we want to ensure that the city is sustainable moving forward. And I think on the debtors book, Honorable Councillor Malek, you're 100% correct. The process of rebuilding our tax administration does have a key focus in terms of dealing with the outstanding debtors and how we try and alleviate the pressure from that aspect. Yes, still growing on a month-on-month basis because we haven't reached a stage where we're collecting more than 100% of that debt book. Even if we collect at 99%, it's an indication that your debtors book is growing by 1%. It does give an indication that you have not really stabilized the system and it's not seamless in nature. I think we do need to put systems in place and focus on all these aspects upon reconfiguration of the new financial recovery plan.
Okay, colleagues, so the recommendation for this report is that MPEC takes note of this report as recommended. Okay, so thank you so much, colleagues. We've come to the end of our meeting. meeting. We will see each other in local inspection at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.